The fire on Weathertop dies with a hiss, smothered under a boot of iron, and the hilltop plunges into a darkness that moves and breathes. 9 tall shadows close in, their blades gleaming like dead stars. Aragorn steps forward, sword and flaming brand raised, but the wind itself seems to recoil from the Nazgûl. The hobbits are frozen. A single scream tears the night. Steel rings, fire scatters, and a red spark arcs out into the void, falling, until even its memory goes out. Before we follow that spark into the dark, tap the like button and subscribe so you will not miss the next journey. Tell me in the comments which realm of Middle-earth you would stand for if war came to your door. Now, watch what happens when hope itself stumbles on a lonely hill. The ring-wraiths advance in a tightening circle, black cloaks snapping in the cold wind that knifes across the ruined watchtower. The hobbits huddle against the broken stones, their breaths coming in white bursts. Frodo's hand clenches the ring beneath his shirt as if it burns him. Aragorn moves to stand between them and the Nazgûl, sword in one hand, a flaming brand in the other. His voice is hoarse but steady. "Back, you devils," he says, "back to the shadows." The Witch King does not halt. His unseen gaze fixes on the ranger, on the flicker of mortal courage that dares to stand before him. He lifts his pale blade, thin as moonlight and colder than the grave. The others fan out, 5 to the front, 4 to the rear. The ring of steel and malice closes. Aragorn knows he cannot let them reach the hobbits. He lunges first, the firebrand whipping through the air, scattering sparks. It catches on one Nazgûl's cloak, and for a moment the night shrieks as black fabric kindles with a sickly, unnatural flame. The ring-wraith staggers back, cloak smouldering, but it does not fall. It does not scream. The sound that escapes its unseen mouth is older than pain and emptier than fear. The others press in. Aragorn pivots, sword flashing. He aims for the gap between cloak and mail, for whatever passes as flesh within. His blade meets resistance, a jarring, unnatural impact that sends a shudder through his arm. The Nazgûl recoils a step, and the others falter. For a heartbeat, it almost resembles the tale that was. But the Witch King has learned from the fire of Gandalf upon the road, from the near failure of Nazgûl in another turning of the world. He does not test this man's strength against his own. He does not risk the fire. He reaches instead into the darkness that clings to him like a second cloak. A wind rises, but it is not the wind of the world. It is a breath from the empty realm between life and death, and it sweeps across the hilltop with a sound like distant weeping. The flames in Aragorn's brands gutter and twist, stretching toward the Nazgûl as if drawn by some invisible tide. Sparks spiral up, then wink out. Smoke coils backward, sucked into the hollow beneath the Witch King's hood. The fire dies. Aragorn stares, stunned, at the smouldering sticks in his hands. For a fraction of a second, his guard dips. The Witch King moves. He does not strike at Aragorn's heart. He does not need to. His blade flashes down, not with the wild fury of battle, but with the precise, cold certainty of a headsman. The steel bites deep into Aragorn's right shoulder, just above the breast, carving through mail and leather, grazing the bone. The man staggers, a strangled cry torn from his throat. The wound is not mortal, not yet, but the blade is Morgul steel. White fire explodes through Aragorn's veins, a frost that burns and a heat that freezes. His sword clatters from his hand. He drops to one knee, clutching at his shoulder, fingers coming away slick with blood that steams in the cold air. The Nazgûl close in. Aragorn! Sam's voice cracks, high and terrified. Frodo surges forward without thinking, driven by a reflex older than fear. He fumbles for his sword, for sting, but his hand finds the chain around his neck instead. The ring is heavy, so heavy, pulling him toward the center of the circle like a stone into a black pool. The Witch King feels the movement. He turns from the fallen ranger and glides toward Frodo, each step a slow, inevitable stroke of doom. "Get back!" Aragorn gasps, trying to rise. His legs do not obey. The world is tilting, sliding into shadow. The Witch King raises his knife again, that slender shard of night that waits to drink another soul. Frodo's eyes lock on the ringwraith's unseen face. The cold seeps into his bones, into his thoughts. The world narrows to the gleam of steel and the whisper that curls around his mind like smoke. Put it on, hide, escape. His fingers close around the ring. Aragorn sees this through a haze, through the dark veil that is already creeping in from the edges of his sight. He tries to shout, to reach, but his arm is led. "Do not, Frodo." The words are barely sound. The Witch King's knife descends. At the last instant, Merry and Pippin hurl themselves forward with a pair of wild, wordless cries. Merry's small blade clangs against the Nazgûl's arm, glancing off with no more effect than a child's toy. Pippin flings himself at the black figure's legs, trying to drag him down. The Witch King does not even sway. His knife plunges, but Merry's desperate strike has altered the angle by the width of a hair. The Morgul blade misses Frodo's heart, slicing instead across his ribs. The tip gouges a shallow line, barely piercing the skin before it snaps off with a splintering hiss. Frodo screams, collapsing, hands clutching at his side. The fragment of the blade vanishes into his flesh, racing toward his heart. The Witch King recoils a step, then another. His hand is empty. His knife is broken. He hisses, a sound of fury and frustration, and reaches for his sword. Sam hurls himself between Frodo and the Dark Lord, tears streaming down his face, his small sword shaking in his grip. "Come on then," he mutters through chattering teeth. "Come on, you black riders. You will not touch him again." The Witch King pauses. Behind Sam, Frodo writhes, clutching at his side, the world already growing thin and grey around him. The ring pulses against his chest, a slow, heavy heartbeat. The Witch King does not need to kill him. He can feel the fragment of the blade working inward, feel the slow, inexorable turning of the hobbit's soul toward the Wraithworld. The ring-bearer is already his in time. He looks down at Aragorn instead. The man lies on his side now, breath coming in ragged gasps. The wound in his shoulder smokes faintly, a sickly grey vapour rising from beneath his torn tunic. His eyes flicker, trying to focus, trying to cling to the light. The Witch King lifts his sword. "Strider!" Pippin sobs. "Get up, please, get up." Aragorn meets the darkness beneath the crownless hood. He feels the weight of centuries bearing down on him, the despair of men, the long failure of his line. He thinks of Elrond's warning, of Arwen's face in the starlight, of the broken sword that he carries, of the kings who could not keep their oaths. He tries to stand. His body does not move. The sword descends. It is not a clean stroke. The Witch King is not here to honor courage. The blade drives through Aragorn's chest, pinning him to the cold stone. The air leaves his lungs in a wet, choking gasp. His hand scrabbles weakly at the steel, then falls away. The Nazgûl hold their circle, silent witnesses, as the last heir of Isildur stares up at the starless sky. A single thought flickers through Aragorn's mind as the dark closes in. So, this is how my line ends. His eyes glaze. The wind howls across Weathertop, tearing at cloaks and hair, but for a long moment there is no sound but the rasp of the Witch King drawing his sword free from Aragorn's body. Blood pools black on the stone. Sam's knees buckle. He drops beside Frodo, shaking, his breath coming in terrified sobs. Merry and Pippin are frozen, faces drained of all colour, their eyes fixed on the still form of the man who was their guide, their shield, their hope. The Witch King turns away from the corpse without another glance. The man is nothing now, a broken tool, a failed line. He looks once more at Frodo, at the hobbit writhing on the ground, at the invisible thread that already binds him to the Wraith world. Soon, he whispers, though no mortal ear hears it. Then he gestures. The Nazgûl melt back into the darkness, gliding down the hill, their cloaks blending with the night until only the memory of their presence remains. The hobbits are left alone with the dead. The silence that follows is worse than any scream. Sam bends over Frodo, hands fumbling, trying to staunch a wound that barely bleeds. Frodo's skin is clammy, his eyes glassy. He whispers something, but the words are thin and distant, as if he is already speaking from far away. Mr. Frodo. Mr. Frodo, can you hear me? Stay with me, sir. Please. Merry staggers to Aragorn's side, dropping to his knees. He reaches out a trembling hand, then snatches it back, as if the stillness might burn him. Strider, he whispers. Strider, wake up. You have to wake up. Pippin stands a little way off, arms wrapped around himself, shivering violently, though the night is no colder than before. He keeps looking down the hill, as if the Nazgûl might come back at any moment. We have to go, he stammers. We have to get away from here. Where? Merry's voice cracks. Where can we go? Sam does not answer. His world has narrowed to Frodo's face, to the faint, rapid flutter of his pulse, to the strange, faraway look in his eyes. Sam, Frodo whispers. His voice is thin, as if coming from a great distance. It is so cold. Sam swallows hard, tears are running unchecked down his cheeks. I know, Mr. Frodo, I know. We will get you warm. We will get you help. Strider said there was a place. Rivendell. We just have to go a bit further. That is all. Just a bit further. He looks up at Aragorn as if expecting the ranger to nod, to give him some stern, steadying word. Aragorn stares at the sky, unblinking. Sam's breath catches. Something breaks inside him, quietly, like a twig underfoot. For a moment, the three hobbits are children again, lost in a world that has suddenly shown its teeth. Then Sam wipes his face with the back of his hand and sets his jaw. Help me, he says. His voice is rough, but steady. We have to get Mr. Frodo away from here. Now. Merry and Pippin move as if in a dream. They gather what they can, fumbling with packs and blankets, their hands clumsy and numb. They do not look at Aragorn again. They dare not. They fashion a rough litter from cloaks and broken spears, and they lift Frodo as gently as they can. He moans softly, eyes fluttering, one hand still clutching at his side. Sam takes the front, shoulders straining. Merry and Pippin take the rear. They stagger down the hill, away from the black stains spreading slowly across the stones. Behind them, on the crown of Weathertop, the body of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, lies alone under the wheeling stars. The wind tugs at his cloak. His sword lies a few feet from his outstretched hand, its blade dark with blood. No one is there to close his eyes. Far away in Rivendell, Elrond Halfelven stands on a balcony, looking east. The night is clear, the stars bright, but a shadow passes over his face, as if some light has gone out in a place he cannot see. He grips the stone railing, knuckles whitening. So it begins, he thinks. He does not yet know how much has already ended. On a hidden road not far from Bree, Gandalf the Grey rides hard. Cloak streaming, staff clutched in his hand. His face is set, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He has escaped Orthanc sooner than in another turning of the tale. The eagles bore him from the pinnacle of the tower as Saruman's wrath echoed against the stone. He has ridden without rest since, spurred by a growing unease. The Nazgûl are abroad. The ring is in the wild. Time is thinner than a blade's edge. He urges Shadowfax faster, whispering words of encouragement in the tongues of men and horses, and things older still. Faster, my friend. We must reach them before the 9. Above him, the stars burn cold and indifferent. Between them and Gandalf, on a lonely hill crowned with ancient ruins, destiny has already shifted. The night deepens. The Nazgûl ride. They do not pursue the hobbits now. Their orders have changed. The Witch King leads them south and east, toward the road, toward the lands of men. His thoughts are a cold, steady current. The heir of Isildur is dead. The last hope of the West has fallen, unproven in the wild. The ring-bearer is wounded with a Morgul blade. In time he will come to them, drawn by the call of the Wraithworld. There is no need to risk all in a blind chase. Other tasks await. In Minas Morgul, far away in the shadow of the Isilduath, a great eye turns its gaze westward. Sauron does not yet know of Aragorn's fate. He has felt the ring stir, a brief flare of presence on Weathertop, then nothing. He has felt the Nazgûl engage, then withdraw. He broods in his dark tower, vast and formless, a will of fire and malice. His thoughts probe the world, seeking, weighing. He fears the line of Isildur. He fears a king returned to Gondor, a hand that might wield the sword that was broken. He does not yet know that the hand that might have grasped that hilt lies cold and still under an empty sky. In the east, beyond the Sea of Rhûn, men whisper of strange omens. In the south, in Harad, the priests of dark temples see visions of a crown falling, of a sword shattering, of a white tree withering to ash. In Rohan, Theoden King sits in his hall in Edoras, feeling a weight of weariness that has nothing to do with age. Wormtongue's whispers are softer now, more insistent. Without knowing why, Theoden feels less inclined to rise, less inclined to question. The world is already bending under a pressure it cannot name. On the Great East Road, 3 hobbits stumble under their burden. The night seems thicker around them. The stars are dimmer. Every sound is too loud, every shadow too deep. Frodo mutters under his breath, words that make no sense to the others. Sometimes he whispers in the common tongue, sometimes in Elvish, sometimes in a language none of them know. His hand keeps straying to the chain around his neck, clutching at it as if for comfort. Sam watches him constantly, his heart clenching tighter with every hour. "Do you think we are going the right way?" Pippin asks once, voice small. Sam does not answer for a long time. "We are going away from them," he says at last. "That is the only right way for now." Merry looks back over his shoulder, up the dark line of the hill. He swallows. "Strider would know what to do," he murmurs. Sam's jaw tightens. "Strider is not here," he says, "so we will just have to manage without him." The words taste like ash. They do not light a fire that night. They huddle together under a tangle of cloaks and branches, Frodo in the middle, shivering despite the layers piled on him. His skin is pale, almost translucent, and there is a faint shadow around his eyes. Sam lies awake, listening to Frodo's uneven breathing, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. He thinks of the Shire, of green fields and warm kitchens, of rosy cotton dancing at the harvest feast. He thinks of Gandalf's fireworks, of Bilbo's stories, of the day Frodo seemed to grow smaller and older all at once when Bilbo left. He thinks of the way Strider had moved in the prancing pony, dangerous and quiet, and somehow reassuring all at once. He thinks of the ranger's fierce eyes as he stood before the Nazgûl, of the way his body had jerked when the sword went in. Sam squeezes his eyes shut, but the image will not leave him. "Do not you go where I cannot follow," he whispers to Frodo, so softly that even he can barely hear it. The night does not answer. Dawn comes grey and thin. The hobbits push on, moving slower now. Frodo's fever rises. Sometimes he stares at things that are not there, reaching out to touch empty air. Sometimes he clutches at Sam's arm with surprising strength, eyes wide and terrified. "They are coming," he whispers once. "Sam, they are coming. I can hear them." Sam looks around wildly, but the road is empty, the fields silent. "No one is coming, Mr. Frodo," he says, forcing a smile. "It is just us and the road." Frodo does not seem to hear. By midday, Sam knows they cannot go on like this. They have no ranger to lead them now, no knowledge of hidden paths or safe havens. They have only the road, and the faint hope that if they keep putting one foot in front of the other, they will reach someone, somewhere, who can help. Gandalf. The name is a lifeline in Sam's mind. Gandalf will know what to do. Gandalf will fix this. He clings to that thought as to a rope in a storm. Far ahead, on the same road, Gandalf reins in Shadowfax, frowning. He feels something, a disturbance in the pattern of the world, like a chord struck out of tune. He closes his eyes, reaching out with senses that are not of flesh alone. He feels the echo of the Nazgûl's presence on Weathertop, the flare of the ring, the sharp, bright spark of a man's courage, then the sudden, jarring silence where that light should still be. He opens his eyes sharply. "Aragorn," he says aloud, the name a question and a fear. Shadowfax tosses his head. Snorting, Gandalf's hand tightens on the reins. He urges the great horse forward again, faster now, his cloak whipping behind him. "Hurry," he murmurs. "We are already too late for something. Let us not be too late for everything." In Bree, Barlaman Butterbur polishes a mug that does not need polishing, his brow furrowed. There is a nagging sense that he has forgotten something important, some message he was supposed to send, some letter he was supposed to give. He shrugs it off, setting the mug down with a clink. The common room is quieter these days. The strange, tall ranger who used to sit in the corner has not been seen in some time. The world outside feels more dangerous. Travelers are fewer. Butterbur hums to himself, trying to ignore the feeling that the walls of the prancing pony are not as solid as they once seemed. In the wild, the Nazgûl cross the road and vanish into the fields, heading south. They move with purpose now, not as hunters, but as messengers and heralds. The Witch King has sent word to Mordor. The heir of Isildur is slain. In Minas Tirith, far away under the looming shadow of Mindolluin, Denethor, son of Ecthelion, sits alone in a high chamber, staring into the depths of the Palantir. His face is gaunt, his eyes hollowed by sleepless nights, and the weight of a burden he will not share. He sees many things in the stone. He sees black ships upon the river. He sees armies marching under strange banners. He He sees a great eye wreathed in flame. He sees, once, a man walking in the wild, tall and grim, with a broken sword at his side. He sees in that man's face a reflection of his own, and something more. He has searched for that face again since, but the stone has not shown it. Tonight, as the Nazgûl's message speeds eastward, a flicker passes across the depths of the Palantir. A shadow falls across that unseen man, and then there is nothing. Denethor's hands tremble on the arms of his chair. He feels a chill that has nothing to do with the cold stone at his back. Thorongil, he whispers, using the old name from his youth, the name of the captain who had won his father's favor and then vanished. Where are you? The stone does not answer. In Imladris, Elrond meets with Glorfindel in a quiet hall lit by golden lamps. I fear the Nine are abroad, Elrond says, and the ring with them. Glorfindel's fair face is grave. I have ridden the roads, he says. I have seen no sign of the halflings or of Aragorn, but the shadows are thickening. The Nazgûl have passed this way. Elrond's brows knit. Aragorn should have reached them by now, he murmurs. He knows these lands well. He has guided many through dangers as great as these. Glorfindel hesitates. There is a darkness in the east that I cannot pierce, he says. Something has changed. Elrond looks eastward, though no window opens in that direction. Send riders, he says at last. We must find them. We must find him. Glorfindel bows and turns to go. He does not find Aragorn. He finds, some days later, a blackened stain on the stones of Weathertop and the faint echo of a great courage that has gone out. He stands there for a long time, the wind tugging at his golden hair, his eyes closed. Estelle, he whispers, using the name Elrond had given the boy long ago. Hope. The word tastes bitter now. He turns away at last and rides hard, following the faint traces of small feet on the road. He finds the hobbits near the ford of Bruinen, staggering under their burden, Frodo half conscious, his skin pale as moonlight. There is no ranger at their side. Glorfindel's eyes widen as he takes in Frodo's condition, the grey pallor of his skin, the way his hand clutches at his side. Morgul wound, he says, voice tight. He is very far gone. Sam looks up at him with desperate hope and stubborn defiance. Can you help him, sir? He demands. Can you save him? Glorfindel does not answer at once. He looks at Frodo, at the shadow creeping over him, at the ring that hangs heavy on his breast. We must get him to Rivendell, he says. There is still hope, but we must hurry. He does not say that hope is thin as a spider's thread. They ride hard, Glorfindel giving up his horse to Frodo, who sways in the saddle, eyes half closed. The other hobbits cling to the stirrups, running as best they can. Behind them, the Nazgûl sense the movement. They turn from their southward course, drawn back toward the road, toward the ford, toward the ring. The chase is not so different from the one that might have been, but a thread has already snapped. At the ford of Bruinen, the Nazgûl confront them. Frodo, barely conscious, finds some last reserve of will and rides into the river. The Witch King advances, his voice a cold command. Give up the halfling, you foolish elf. Give up the ring. Frodo raises his hand, his voice thin and wavering. You shall have neither, he whispers, nor the ring. The Nazgûl move to cross. The river rises, Elrond's power, and Gandalf's, sent ahead like a whisper on the wind, transforms the waters into a roaring wall of white horses that crash down upon the black riders. The Nazgûl are swept away, their mounts screaming, their forms battered and broken. Frodo collapses on the far bank, the world going black. He wakes in Rivendell, as in the tale that was. But when he opens his eyes, the first face he sees is not Gandalf's, though the wizard is there, nor Elrond's, though the elf lord stands nearby. It is Sam's face, lined with exhaustion and worry, eyes red from weeping. "Mr. Frodo," Sam chokes out. "You are awake. You are really awake." Frodo blinks, his gaze wandering. "Sam," he whispers. "What happened? Where is—" The memory rushes back like a tide. "Weathertop," he says, voice breaking. "The fire, the shadows, Aragorn." Silence falls over the room. Gandalf looks away. Elrond's face is a mask, but there is sorrow in his eyes. Frodo's breath quickens. "Where is he?" he demands, though his voice is still weak. "Where is Strider?" Sam's hand tightens on the blanket. He did not make it, Mr. Frodo," he says softly. "On Weathertop, they got him." Frodo stares at him, not understanding. That is not how it was supposed to be," he says. He was the one who was going to lead us, to help us. His voice cracks. He turns his head, staring at the ceiling, blinking hard. Gandalf steps forward, his staff clicking softly on the stone floor. "He gave his life to buy you time," the wizard says quietly. "Time enough to escape, time enough to reach us." Frodo swallows, his throat working. "Then it was for nothing," he says. "Look at me. Look at what I have brought here." His hand moves toward the chain around his neck, but Sam catches it gently. "It was not for nothing," Sam says fiercely. "You are alive. That has to count for something. It has to." Elrond moves to the bedside, his hands light and cool as he examines Frodo's wound. "The shard has been removed," he says. "You were very close to being lost, Frodo, son of Drogo. Another day, perhaps less, and you would have become something else." Frodo shudders. "I can still feel it," he whispers, "like a splinter of ice in my heart." "That will fade with time," Elrond says, "though some shadow will remain. Such wounds do not wholly heal." Gandalf watches Frodo's face, the way his eyes keep flicking toward the door, as if expecting a tall, ragged figure to appear there at any moment. "He was more than you knew," Gandalf says at last. "More than most in this world knew. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, was the last of the line of Isildur, the heir to the throne of Gondor." Frodo turns his head slowly, staring at the wizard. "The king," he whispers. "He was the king." Gandalf nods. "He was our hope," he says. "One of them, at least." "One of them," Sam repeats, frowning. Gandalf's gaze moves to the ring on Frodo's chest. "There is another," he says, "if he will bear it." Frodo closes his eyes. He sees Aragorn's face again, drawn and weary, lit by the firelight in Bree. He hears his voice on the road, quiet and steady. He sees him standing on Weathertop, alone against the Nine, and then falling, and the blood on the stones. "I am not a king," Frodo whispers. "No," Gandalf says. "You are something else." Outside, Rivendell is as fair as ever. Waterfalls sing down the cliffs. Elves move along the paths, their voices low and musical. The air is clear, the sky bright, but there is a weight in the valley now. A sense of absence that no song can quite dispel. In a quiet glade, Aragorn Undomiel stands alone, her dark hair falling like a river over her shoulders. She holds in her hands a shard of broken steel, its edge dull, its surface marred by old rust and new blood. Elrond found the pieces of Narsil long ago and had them brought to Rivendell. He had meant, in time, to have them reforged. Now he is not sure for whom. Arwen runs her fingers along the blade, feeling the cold metal, the history it carries. She sees in her mind's eye a boy with dark hair and bright eyes running through these halls. She sees a young man, tall and grave, learning the ways of kingship and war. She sees a ranger, weathered and weary, slipping in and out of the shadows of the world. She had chosen him. She had chosen a mortal life for his sake. Now that choice hangs in the air like an unanswered question. A soft footstep sounds behind her. She turns to see Elrond, his face lined with an old sorrow. "Father," she says quietly. "Elrond," he corrects gently. "You are no child now." She looks back at the broken sword. "Is it true?" she asks. "Is he truly gone?" Elrond's eyes close briefly. "I have felt his passing," he says. "As I felt the passing of your mother when she sailed. His spirit has gone beyond the circles of the world. There is no returning from that road." Arwen's hand tightens on the shard until her knuckles whiten. "Then what becomes of my choice?" she whispers. "Of the fate we spoke of? Of the child you saw in your visions?" Elrond looks at her. And for a moment, the mask of the wise Lord of Rivendell slips, revealing the father beneath. "I do not know," he says. "The future has grown dark to me. Threads I once saw clearly are cut. New paths twist in shadows I cannot pierce." Arwen's gaze drops to the sword. "Will you reforge it?" she asks. "For someone else?" Elrond is silent for a long time. "There is no one else," he says at last. "The line of Elendil is ended. The kings of men are truly gone." The words fall like stones into a still pool. In Minas Tirith, Denethor feels something inside him unclench and something else tighten. The fear that had gnawed at him, the fear of a returning king who might supplant him, fades. In its place grows a heavier burden. He is alone now, steward of a kingdom with no king, guardian of a city that stands against a darkness growing stronger by the day. He sits in the high hall of the Tower of Ecthelion, the white rod of the stewards in his hand, and he feels the weight of stone and history pressing down on him. "Boromir," he says softly. "Faramir." His sons stand before him, tall and strong. Boromir's eyes are bright, his bearing proud. Faramir's gaze is quieter, more thoughtful. "There will be no king to return," Denethor says. "Gondor stands or falls with us. With you." Boromir straightens, chest swelling. "Then we will hold it," he says. "We will not fail." Faramir's eyes flicker, a shadow crossing his face. "Father," he says carefully, "there are other powers in this world. The elves, the dwarves, the realms of the north. We are not alone." Denethor's mouth twists. "The north is a waste," he says. "The Dunedain there are scattered and leaderless. Their chieftain is dead, I am told, slain in the wild. There is no help to be had from that quarter." He does not say how he knows this. He does not speak of the Palantir, of the glimpses it has given him of a tall man falling on a lonely hill. Boromir's brows shoot up. "Dead?" he says. "Their chieftain? How? When?" "It matters not," Denethor says. "What matters is that we cannot look to others to save us. Gondor must be her own strength." Boromir nods firmly. "We will be," he says. Faramir looks at his father, at his brother, at the great hall with its empty throne. He feels a chill, as if some great hand has lifted from the city, leaving it exposed. In the Council of Elrond, the chairs are arranged as before, the faces gathered much the same. Dwarves, elves, men, hobbits, a wizard. But one chair is empty. Elrond speaks of the history of the ring, of Isildur's failure, of the long watch that has led them to this moment. He speaks of the Nazgûl, of Frodo's wounding, of the narrow escape at the ford. He does not speak of Aragorn until he must. Gandalf tells of Saruman's treachery, of his imprisonment in Orthanc, of the White Wizard's desire for the ring. He tells of his escape, of his journey north and east, of his arrival in Rivendell. He tells of Weathertop. He stood alone against the Nine, Gandalf says, his voice low. He bought the hobbits time with his life. Without him, they would not have reached Rivendell at all. Legolas, son of Thranduil, bows his head, his fair hair falling forward. He was a friend to my people, he says. A shadow will fall on Mirkwood when they hear of this. Gimli, son of Glóin, grunts, his expression troubled. I heard tales of a ranger in the north, he says, a man who walked in shadows, and yet was a friend to all free folk. I did not know he was a king. Boromir of Gondor sits stiffly, his jaw clenched. My father spoke of a captain named Thorongil, he says slowly, a man who served Gondor long ago, who won great victories and then vanished. He said that if Thorongil had returned, he might have been a rival to the stewards. He looks at Gandalf. Was that Aragorn? Gandalf nods. Thorongil was one of his many names, he says. He was a friend to your father's father. He would have been a friend to you. Boromir's eyes darken. And now he is dead, he says, struck down in the wild before he could claim what was his by right, before Gondor could see a king again. He looks at the ring, lying on a small table before Elrond, its gold surface dull in the soft light. Perhaps it is as well, he says, though his tone is not entirely convinced. A king with such a weapon, who could say what might have come of it? Elrond's gaze sharpens. No one who would claim that weapon could be a true king, he says, not in the way that Aragorn might have been. Silence falls. It is broken by a small, clear voice. Then what are we to do? Frodo asks. He sits in his chair, smaller than the others, but the lines of pain and resolve on his face make him seem older than his years. The ring cannot remain here, Elrond says, nor can it be used. It must be destroyed. And that means taking it to Mordor, Gandalf says, to the very fires where it was forged. Boromir's hand tightens on the arm of his chair. Into the heart of the enemy's land, he says, with no king to lead us, with Gondor besieged, and the strength of men failing. He leans forward. Why not use it? He demands. Why not wield it against Sauron? A great captain, a man of strength and will, might turn the tide with such a weapon. Elrond's gaze is cool. And who would that captain be? He asks. You? Boromir flushes. I am my father's son, he says. I have led men in battle. I have defended the White City. If there is no king to take this burden, then perhaps a steward's son must. Gandalf's eyes are hard. The ring cannot be wielded for good, he says. It answers to Sauron alone. Any who would use it would be used by it in turn. You would become a puppet, Boromir, even if you did not know it. Boromir's jaw works. You ask us to sit idle while Gondor burns, he says, to send this thing away into the dark with no promise that it will ever return, with no king to rally behind, with no hope but a hobbit's feet. He looks at Frodo, at his small hands, at the faint pallor that still clings to him. You were wounded, he says. You were almost lost. How can we ask you to go back into that shadow? Frodo looks down at his hands. He sees Aragorn's blood on them, though there is none. He hears his own voice on Weathertop, thin and frightened, calling out to the Nazgûl. He feels again the cold of the Morgul blade, the pull of the ring. He lifts his head. I do not know, he says. I do not know how I can go back, but I do know this. If I do not, then his death really was for nothing. He looks at Gandalf, at Elrond, at the gathered faces. I will take the ring, he says. though I do not know the way." The words fall like a stone into still water, sending ripples through the room. Gandalf closes his eyes briefly, relief and sorrow mingling in his expression. "You will have my help as long as it is in my power," he says. "I will go with you, and you will have mine," says a clear, bright voice. Legolas stands, his hand on the hilt of his knife. "I will go for the sake of my people," he says. "And for the sake of the friendship I bore Aragorn." Gimli grunts, rising to his feet. "And mine," he says. "Dwarves do not forget debts, nor do we let elves have all the glory." Boromir hesitates, torn between pride and duty, between fear and anger. At last, he stands. "If there is to be no king," he says, "then Gondor must at least have a voice. I will go with you. I will see this thing with my own eyes, and I will do what I can to protect you on the road." Sam, who has been sitting at the edge of the council, half hidden, half ignored, suddenly surges to his feet. "You are not going anywhere without me, Mr. Frodo," he says, his voice shaking but firm. "I promised I would not leave you, and I mean to keep it." Merry and Pippin exchange a glance. "If Sam is going, then so are we," Merry says. "You are not leaving us behind again," Pippin adds. Elrond looks at them, at these small, stubborn creatures who stand where kings might have stood, who offer themselves where great lords might have faltered. "So be it," he says. "You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring." He does not say that it is a fellowship missing its heart. The journey south from Rivendell begins much as it might have, with snow on Caradhras and the dark of Moria, with the drums in the deep and the fall of Gandalf in the abyss. But at every turn there is a small difference, a gap where Aragorn's presence would have been. On Caradhras, it is Boromir who takes the lead in breaking the path through the snow, his broad shoulders straining, his breath steaming in the cold air. He looks back often, checking on the hobbits, on Frodo, whose wound aches in the bitter wind. "Are you well?" Boromir asks once, his tone gruffer than he intends. Frodo nods, teeth chattering. I am managing," he says. Boromir frowns. "You should not have to manage," he mutters. When they turn back from the mountain and choose the dark road through Moria, it is not Aragorn who argues for caution, who balances Gandalf's grim necessity with concern for the others. It is Legolas who voices the elves' dread of the deep places, and Boromir who mutters about folly and risk. In the dark halls of Khazad-dûm, it is Boromir who stands closest to Frodo when the orcs swarm them, his shield raised, his sword a blur of steel. When the cave troll bursts through the door, it is Boromir who hurls himself forward, bellowing a challenge. The spear that would have skewered Frodo instead slams into Boromir's shield, driving him back against the wall. The impact cracks the wood, splintering it, but the hobbit behind him remains unpierced. "Stay behind me," Boromir grunts. Frodo, who remembers another spear in another place, and a man who took a blow meant for him, stares at Boromir with a strange, haunted gratitude. At the bridge of Khazad-dûm, when Gandalf falls, the Fellowship reels as before. They stagger out into the light of Lorien, broken and grief-stricken. There, in the Golden Wood, Galadriel looks into her mirror and sees a world with one more empty space. She speaks to Frodo in the glade, offering him the choice she once offered him before. He offers her the ring, as before. She refuses, as before. But when she speaks of the hope of men, of the returning king, there is a pause in her words, a faint hitch in her voice. "The world is changing," she says. "I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost. She looks at Frodo. And some that might have been will never be, she says softly. Frodo does not ask what she means. He thinks he knows. In the boats on the great river, as they drift toward the breaking of the Fellowship, Boromir sits in the prow, staring south. His thoughts are a tangle of duty and desire, of fear for his city and anger at his powerlessness. He thinks of Aragorn, of the king who might have returned, who might have taken this burden from him, who might have stood in the White City and borne the weight of its fate. He thinks of the empty throne. He thinks of the ring. When they land at Amon Hen, the tension that has been building finally breaks. Boromir finds Frodo alone among the trees as before. He speaks of Gondor's need, of the ring's power. His voice cracks with desperation. "Give it to me," he says. "Give it to Gondor. Let us use it against him." Frodo steps back, shaking his head. "No," he says. "You are not yourself, Boromir." Boromir lunges. The scene plays out with cruel familiarity. Frodo slips the ring on and vanishes. Boromir staggers, horrified at what he has done, calling out apologies to the empty air. "Forgive me," he cries. "Frodo, please." The ring shows Frodo the eye, as before, and he tears it off in terror. He makes his choice on the hilltop, alone. He will go to Mordor alone. But when he returns to the shore, he does not find Aragorn waiting, grim and gentle, to counsel him. He finds Sam. Sam, who has been searching for him, frantic and stubborn, spots the boat pushing off from the shore. "Mr. Frodo!" he shouts, splashing into the water. "Mr. Frodo, no!" Frodo hesitates, torn between his resolve to go alone and his love for his friend. Sam does not hesitate. He plunges deeper, the water rising to his chest, his chin, his mouth. He cannot swim. He sinks. Frodo's heart lurches. He lunges forward, grabbing Sam's hand, hauling him up into the boat, coughing and sputtering. "Sam, you fool of a took," he begins, then laughs shakily. "Wrong, hobbit. You cannot swim." "Of course I cannot," Sam gasps. "I am not meant to." "But I am meant to go with you." Frodo looks at him, at his loyal, stubborn, terrified face. He nods. "Very well," he says. "Then we go together. There is no Aragorn to come upon them on the shore, to choose between following Frodo or rescuing Merry and Pippin. There is no ranger's instinct to sense the hobbit's danger, no kingly judgment to divide the Fellowship's path. Boromir, stumbling through the woods, hears the orcs before he sees them. He hears Merry and Pippin's cries. He runs toward the sound, sword drawn. He fights like a man possessed as before. Arrows thud into him one after another. He falls to his knees, still swinging, still roaring defiance. But when he looks up, gasping, he does not see Aragorn's face bending over him. He sees Legolas and Gimli, their expressions horrified, their weapons red with orc blood. Where is Frodo? Boromir rasps. "Gone," Legolas says. "We cannot find him." Boromir's eyes close briefly. "Tried to take the ring," he whispers. "From him. I failed you all. I failed Gondor." Gimli kneels beside him, his broad hand gripping Boromir's shoulder. "You fought like 10 men, he says roughly. "You did not fail your city." Boromir's gaze flickers between them. "There is no king," he says, his voice barely audible. "There is no one else. You must help them. Help my city. Help my people." He coughs, blood flecking his lips. "Tell my father. Tell him I tried." His head falls back. The horn of Gondor lies broken beside him. Legolas closes his eyes. "What now?" Gimli asks hoarsely. "Do we go after Frodo, after the orcs? We cannot do both." Legolas looks south toward Mordor, then west toward Rohan and Gondor. If Aragorn were here, he begins, then stops. He takes a deep breath. Frodo must go where we cannot follow, he says. Our path lies elsewhere. The orcs that took the little ones were heading toward Isengard. Saruman's hand is in this. If we can free Merry and Pippin, we may yet strike a blow against the enemy. And Gondor? He looks at Boromir's still face. Gondor will need every ally it can get, he says. We will go to Rohan. We will do what we can. Gimli nods slowly. Then let us make it count, he says. They lay Boromir to rest in a boat as before and send him over the falls. They turn their feet toward Rohan. In the east, Frodo and Sam trudge toward Mordor, alone as they were always meant to be. But the world they walk through is subtly different. There is no Aragorn to summon the dead at Dun Harrow, no king to ride the paths of the dead and bring ghostly armies to the Pelennor, no royal standard to be unfurled before the Black Gate. In Rohan, Theoden's decline is swifter. Without Aragorn's timely arrival, without his healing hands and his quiet, steady presence, the king sinks deeper under Wormtongue's influence. When Gandalf comes at last, white and terrible, to break Saruman's hold, he finds a hall more decayed, a king more withered, a people more cowed. He drives out Wormtongue as before. He rallies Rohan to ride to war. But there is a hesitation in Theoden's eyes when he speaks of riding to Gondor's aid. Gondor has not come to our aid in many years, he says. Why should we ride for them now, when our own land is threatened? Because if Gondor falls, Rohan falls next, Gandalf says. Because if the White City burns, there will be no one left to stand between you and the shadow. Theoden looks at Eomer, at Eowyn, at the men of his household. We will ride, he says at last. We will not be found wanting, but the muster is smaller, the riders fewer. The wounds of Saruman's treachery run deeper. At Helm's Deep, there is no Aragorn to stand on the wall, to rally the men when hope seems lost, to lead the charge through the culvert. Legolas and Gimli fight fiercely, but their numbers are few. Gandalf's arrival at dawn with Eomer and the riders still turns the tide, but the cost is higher. More men lie dead in the Deeping Combe. More children are left fatherless. The songs that will be sung of that night are darker. In Minas Tirith, Denethor's despair grows. He sees in the Palantir the mustering of Mordor's forces, the black ships on the Anduin, the battering ram Grond at the gates. He does not see a king riding up from the south with an army of the dead at his back. He does not see a white tree blossoming. He does not see a banner unfurled that bears the tokens of Elendil. He sees only doom. When Faramir returns from Osgiliath, wounded and near death, Denethor's mind cracks, orders the pyre as before. He raves of the futility of resistance, of the madness of fighting a war that cannot be won. But there is no Aragorn to come to the houses of healing, to lay his hands on Faramir's brow and call him back from the dark. There is no king's touch to break the fever and turn the tide. Eowyn lies there too, broken from her encounter with the Witch King on the Pelennor. Merry sits by her side, his small hand wrapped around hers, tears streaking his face. "Do not you leave me too," he whispers. Gandalf stands in the doorway, his face grave. "I can do much," he says, "but I am not what he was. I am not the king." He moves to Denethor's pyre instead, dragging the steward from the flames by force, wrestling with him on the steps of the House of the Stewards. Denethor fights like a madman, clawing at Gandalf, spitting curses. "Let me go!" he screams. "Let me end it. There is no hope. There is no king. Gondor is finished." Gandalf slaps him, hard. "Look around you," he snarls. "Your people are still fighting. Your city still stands. You are steward. Act like it." Denethor stares at him, panting, ash smeared on his face. Something flickers in his eyes, some last ember of duty. He slumps. "Very well," he whispers. "I will see this through, to the bitter end." On the walls of Minas Tirith, the battle rages. Rohan comes as before, their horns echoing in the morning air. Theoden falls beneath the Witch King's shadow as before. Elwyn stands before him, defiant, as before. Merry strikes from behind as before. The Witch King falls, shrieking. But something in his fall is different now. He has slain the heir of Isildur with his own hand. He has broken that line forever. The prophecy that no living man shall hinder him has twisted on itself, but the deeper doom he once feared has already been averted. As he crumbles, as his form dissolves into nothing, a strange, cold satisfaction lingers in the air. On the Anduin, the black ships approach. There is no army of the dead aboard them now, no king at their prow. The ships are full of corsairs from Umbar, their sails black, their decks crowded with archers and swordsmen. When the ships reach the Harland, the men of Gondor and Rohan, exhausted from the battle on the Pelennor, turn to face this new threat with grim resignation. "It seems we will be overwhelmed after all," Eomer says, blood streaking his face. "We have done what we could." Then, from the lead ship, a banner is raised. It is not the white tree on black, but a simple white cloth bearing the device of a silver swan. Prince Imrahil of Dol Amroth stands at the prow, his armor shining in the sun. Behind him, the men of his fief and others from the southern coasts who have rallied to his call pour onto the shore. They had taken the ships from the corsairs farther downriver, ambushing them in the night. They had sailed up with all speed, not knowing if they would arrive in time. They are not ghosts, they are not an unstoppable tide, but they are enough. The men of Gondor and Rohan rally. The battle turns once more. The black ships become the instruments of their enemies' defeat instead of their triumph. On the walls, Denethor watches, his face streaked with soot, his eyes hollow. "There was no need for a king after all," he murmurs, half to himself. "We have done this with our own strength." Gandalf stands beside him, staff in hand. "At a terrible cost," he says, "and this is not the end." For in the east, Frodo and Sam crawl through the dust of Mordor, their bodies broken, their spirits stretched thin. Gollum follows them, as before, torn between hunger and a strange, twisted pity. The ring grows heavier with every step. There is no king at the Black Gate to draw Sauron's gaze with the promise of Isildur's heir. There is no royal standard to wave defiantly before the hosts of Mordor. But there is still a diversion. Gandalf, Denethor, Eomer, Imrahil, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Pippin, and what remains of the armies of Gondor and Rohan march to the Morannon. They stand before the Black Gate, a ragged, defiant remnant. Gandalf holds up a white banner, not of kingship, but of resistance. "Come not in the name of any king," he calls. "We come as free folk of Middle-earth to challenge you, to say that even if we must fall, we will not bow." The mouth of Sauron rides out, sneering, as before. He shows them Frodo's mithril shirt, as before. He lies, as before. Denethor's face crumples when he sees the shirt. For a moment, the despair he fought back in the Houses of Healing surges up again. "Then it was all for nothing," he whispers. "All of it." Gandalf takes the shirt and flings it aside. "We do not know that," he says. "We will not know until the end. And even if it is so, We will not let his sacrifice be in vain. We will fight, they do. The gate opens. The hosts of Mordor pour out. The small army of the West is surrounded. They form a ring, back to back, swords flashing, spears bristling. Denethor fights at the front, the white rod of the stewards discarded, a sword in his hand instead. He moves with a grim fury, as if trying to carve a space in the world where his city can still exist. Merry and Pippin fight at the edges, small blades darting, fear burning in their chests like fire. Legolas and Gimli stand shoulder to shoulder, counting kills even as they are pushed back. Gandalf stands at the center, staff blazing, light flaring from his hand. Above them, in the dark tower, Sauron's eye is fixed on this small, defiant knot of resistance. He feels no fear now. The heir of Isildur is gone. The line that once defied him is broken. These are gnats before a storm. He turns his gaze toward them, intent on crushing this last flicker of defiance. In that moment, on the slopes of Mount Doom, Frodo stands at the crack of doom, the ring in his hand. He is thinner than he was, his eyes sunken, his face drawn. Sam stands behind him, swaying on his feet, every breath a labor. "Go on, Mr. Frodo," Sam whispers. "End it." Frodo looks down at the ring. In another turning of the tale, he might have thought of Aragorn then, of the king who would come, of the world that would be if he succeeded. Now he thinks of something else. He thinks of Weathertop, of Aragorn's body on the stones, of the blood spreading slowly. He thinks of all the deaths that have followed. Gandalf in Moria, Boromir at Amon Hen, Theoden on the Pelennor. Countless nameless men and women in cities and fields and forests. He thinks of the weight of all those sacrifices pressing down on him. He thinks of the ring. "I have come so far," he whispers. "We have all come so far." He raises the ring. "I will not do this thing," he says. The words are almost the same as they might have been. "I will not destroy it." He slides it onto his finger. The world vanishes. Sam cries out, lunging forward, but Gollum is already there, springing from the shadows, teeth bared. The struggle is fierce, desperate as before. Sam is thrown aside. Gollum bites. There is a scream, thin and piercing. Gollum dances on the edge of the chasm, the ring in his mouth, exultant. He slips. He falls. The ring falls with him. The fire takes it. In the tower, the eye flares, then shatters. At the Black Gate, the hosts of Mordor falter. The ground trembles. The towers crack. The Nazgûl, what remains of them, wheel and scream, then burst into flame. Gandalf looks up, tears on his face. "It is done," he whispers. Denethor, bleeding from a dozen wounds, leans on his sword. "Then we have won?" he asks. Gandalf's gaze sweeps the battlefield, the ruins, the bodies. "For now," he says. Barad-dûr falls. The ground swallows the Black Gate. The armies of Mordor scatter or are buried. The men of the West stand amid the wreckage, stunned. They have no king to crown. They have no white tree to plant. They have only each other and a world that has been saved at a terrible cost. In Minas Tirith, there is no coronation. There is no wedding of king and queen. There is no return of the king. There is a steward who walks the halls more slowly now, his hair whiter, his eyes less proud. Denethor stands on the balcony of the Tower of Ecthelion, looking out over his city. The scars of war are everywhere. Broken walls, blackened stones, empty houses. But there are also signs of life. Children playing in the streets, merchants reopening their shops, farmers bringing produce to market. Faramir walks beside him, his arm in a sling, his face still pale from the fever that nearly took him. "You could still seek a king," Faramir says quietly. "There are other lines, other houses. Some in the south claim descent from the Númenóreans. You could share this burden." Denethor's mouth twists. "There is no one like him," he says. "No one who could have been what he was meant to be. Anyone else would be a shadow, a pretender. Better a steward who knows his limits than a false king who does not." Faramir looks at him, surprised. "That is humbler than I expected," he says. Denethor snorts. "Do not mistake acceptance for humility," he says. "I still think I could have done better with more to work with." He rests his hands on the stone railing. "But this is what we have," he says. "A city battered but standing. A world scarred but not broken. We will make do." In the houses of healing, Eowyn walks among the beds, her arm in a sling, her step a little slower than before. Merry trails after her, carrying a basket of herbs. "Do you ever think of what might have been?" Merry asks once as they pause by a window. Eowyn looks out at the city, at the people moving below. "All the time," she says. "I think of a white banner on the wind, of a king's hands on my brow, of a world where I might have loved someone who understood the shadow in me." Merry looks up at her, his eyes sad. "And now?" he asks. She smiles faintly. "Now I think of what is," she says. "Of a steward's son who reads poetry, of a hobbit who will not let me brood too long, of a people who need healing more than they need songs of what might have been." In Lothlorien, Galadriel stands at the edge of the wood, her hand resting on a malon trunk. "The power of the three is fading," she says to Celeborn. "The ring is gone. Our time is ending." Celeborn looks at her. "Would it have been different if he had lived?" he asks. Galadriel's eyes are distant. "Perhaps," she says. "A king in Gondor might have held back the fading for a while. His line might have bridged the worlds of men and elves a little longer. But in the end, even that would have passed. The age of men has come, with or without him." She smiles sadly. "Perhaps it is better this way," she says. "Without a single shining figure to look back on with longing. Men will have to shape their own stories now, without waiting for a king to return." In Rivendell, the halls are quieter. Many of the elves have gone west. Those who remain move like people in a house already half-packed, their footsteps echoing in empty rooms. Arwen sits alone in the Hall of Fire, a small bundle in her lap. It is a cloak, worn and patched, that once belonged to a ranger. It still smells faintly of smoke and pine in the wild. Elrond approaches, his steps soft. "You could still sail," he says gently. "The straight road is open to you. There is nothing to bind you here now." Arwen's fingers tighten on the cloak. "I chose him," she says. "I chose a mortal life for his sake. That choice cannot be unmade, even if he is gone." Elrond's face twists with pain. "If he had lived," he says, "you would have had a life of joy and sorrow, of love and loss, but it would have been yours together. Now I have a life of sorrow and joy," Arwen says, "of love and loss. It is still mine." She looks up at him. "I will not go," she says. "I will stay in Middle-earth. I will walk its paths. I will see what comes of this world we have saved, even if I must do it alone." Elrond closes his eyes. "Then I must leave you," he says, "for I cannot bear to watch you fade." Arwen smiles, a small, sad smile. "You have watched many fade," she says. "You have watched ages pass. You can bear this too." Elrond shakes his head. "I am tired," he says simply. When he sails west, Arwen stands on a green hill and watches the ship vanish into the light. She feels something tear inside her, a cord that has bound her to the west snapping. She is alone now, more truly than any elf has ever been. In the Shire, the grass grows green again. The party tree stands untouched. There is no scouring, no ruffians, no Sharky. The war has passed them by, almost entirely. Frodo sits on a bench outside Bag End, a book in his lap, the red book of Westmarch not yet begun. Sam tends the garden, humming under his breath. Rosie comes and goes, her laughter bright. Merry and Pippin visit often, the tales of the war growing wilder with each telling. On the surface, it is peace. Inside, Frodo is hollow. He wakes at night, sweating, his hand clutching at his chest where the ring once hung. He hears Aragorn's voice in his dreams, sees his body on Weathertop. He hears Boromir's horn. He smells the sulphur of Mount Doom. On the anniversaries of his wounding, the pain returns, sharp and vivid. Sam finds him curled on the floor, teeth clenched, eyes distant. "We did it," Sam tells him, over and over. "We saved it. We saved them." Frodo nods, but the words slide off him. "There should have been a king," he says once, quietly. All of this should have meant something more. A new beginning, a better world. Instead, it feels like we just stopped it from getting worse. Sam sits beside him. "Sometimes that is all you can do," he says. "Sometimes not getting worse is all the better you get." Frodo laughs, a short, bitter sound. "You always did have a way with words, Samwise Gamgee," he says. Years pass. Frodo grows thinner, more distant. The Shire prospers, but he does not quite belong to it anymore. When the time comes for the ring-bearers to sail, for Frodo to leave Middle-earth, there is no king on the shore to bow to him. There is no white tree in bloom behind him. There is Sam, tears streaming down his face. There is Merry, trying not to sob. There is Pippin clutching his arm. And there is Arwen, standing a little apart, her dark hair stirred by the sea breeze. She steps forward as Frodo hesitates at the gangplank. "Take this," she says, holding out a white jewel on a silver chain. "It was meant for another. But he is gone, and you have borne a burden no less heavy." Frodo looks at the jewel, then at her face. "You loved him," he says softly. "Yes," Arwen says. "And you stayed," Frodo says. "For him." Arwen smiles faintly. "And now for you," she says. "For all of you. For this world that still needs watching, even without kings." Frodo takes the jewel. "Thank you," he says. He boards the ship. As it pulls away, Sam feels something tear inside him, as if a thread that has been holding him together has snapped. He stands on the shore long after the ship has vanished, the sound of the waves in his ears. Behind him, the Shire waits. Rosie waits. His children, not yet born, wait in the shape of a life he has not yet lived. He turns at last and walks back up the hill. Years later, when Sam himself grows old, when Rosie has gone, when his children are grown, he stands once more on a western shore. There is a small boat waiting, simple and plain. He holds the white jewel in his hand, feeling its cool weight. He thinks of Frodo, of Gandalf, of Aragorn. He never met the king. He only knew the ranger, and even that only for a short time. But the memory of that tall, grim figure, of the way he stood before the Nazgûl, has never left him. He steps into the boat. As it drifts out, the sky turns golden. The air grows still. Sam closes his eyes. He does not know if there will be a king waiting on the far shore. He does not know if there will be any crowns at all, any thrones, any white trees. He only knows that he is tired and that he has done what he could. In Middle-earth, the years roll on. Gondor rebuilds. Rohan heals. The Shire thrives. The elves fade. The dwarves delve. Men spread across the lands, their kingdoms rising and falling. There are no great tales of a returned king to anchor their histories. No single shining figure to look back on with longing. Their stories are messier, more fragmented. Heroes rise and fall in many places, their names remembered in local songs and half-forgotten legends. In a tavern in Pelagir, a sailor tells of a prince who took black ships from corsairs and turned them against the enemy. In a hall in Rohan, a skald sings of a shield maiden who slew a shadow no man could face. In a village in Ithilien, children play at being a steward's son who loved books and gardens more than war, but who still rode to battle when he had to. In the north, the Dunedain dwindle. Without a chieftain to rally them, they become scattered bands, then isolated families, then faint traces in the bloodlines of ordinary men. The ruins of Fornost crumble further. The watch on the borders of the Shire grows lax, then disappears. But the shadow is gone. There is no great enemy left to exploit that weakness. The world does not end. On a lonely hill in the wild, the stones of Weathertop stand against the sky. Grass has grown over the blackened stain where a man once fell. Moss creeps up the broken walls. Birds nest in the cracks. Sometimes, on certain nights, when the wind is right, a traveller who camps there might feel a strange weight in the air, a sense of something unfinished. They might dream of a tall man with a weather-beaten face and grey eyes standing between them and a ring of shadows. They might wake with tears on their cheeks, not knowing why. The world does not remember him as a king, but the land remembers the shape of the hope he was meant to be. And somewhere, beyond the circles of the world, where time does not flow as it does in Middle-earth, a man who never wore a crown walks on a green field under a sky that never darkens. He pauses, looking back, as if he hears a sound carried on a wind that does not blow. It might be the echo of a horn. It might be the laughter of hobbits. It might be the whisper of a name. Estelle. He smiles, a small, quiet smile, and turns away. On Weathertop, the wind sighs through the broken stones. The hill is empty. The fire has long since gone out.